The small town of Abbeville, Alabama, had always been a quiet place, the kind where the nights were still, save for the chirping of crickets and the occasional hoot of an owl. But when the fog rolled in thick and the streetlights cast long, trembling shadows, folks knew to hurry home before midnight, because that's when she came out, Huggin Molly. The children had always whispered about her in hushed tones, a towering woman dressed in all black, with eyes that glowed like embers in the night. She wasn't a killer, at least not in the way most stories went. No, she did something much worse. She hugged you so tight, you thought you'd never breathe again. And then she screamed in your ear so loud it could drive a person mad. Some called it a myth. Others swore they had heard her wails drifting through the streets, but no one in Abbeville wanted to be out alone after dark, especially not James Carter. James was 17, and like most teenagers, he didn't believe in ghost stories. His friends, Mikey, Todd, and Claire, were the same. So when Friday night came, and the town was wrapped in that unsettling fog, Mikey leaned over the diner table and smirked. "Bet you won't walk down Main Street alone," he said. James scoffed, stirring the ice in his soda. "What, you think I'm scared of a bedtime story?" Claire shivered. "It's not just a story. My grandpa swears he saw her when he was a kid. Said she came out of nowhere and nearly crushed him to death." "Yeah? And where's the proof?" James chuckled. "You guys can believe in fairy tales if you want, but I'm walking Main Street tonight, alone." Todd clapped his hands. "All right, tough guy. Just don't go crying to your mama when Huggin Molly finds you." By 11:45 p.m., James was standing at the edge of Main Street, alone. The fog swirled thick, swallowing the old street lamps until their glow was just a faint pulse in the mist. The town was silent, too silent, the kind of quiet that prickled at the back of your neck. James stuffed his hands into his jacket pockets and started walking. He wasn't scared, not really. The legend was just that, a legend. People like to tell scary stories to make life in a boring town more exciting. His sneakers scuffed against the cracked sidewalk. The tap, tap, tap echoed down the empty street. He passed by the old hardware store, its windows dark and empty. The ice cream shop closed for the night. The antique store, its sign creaking in the wind. Then just as he reached the middle of the block, a chill crept up his spine. Something was behind him. He froze. His breath came short and quick. He wasn't sure why, but every instinct in his body told him to run. But James didn't run. He turned around. And there, standing beneath the flickering streetlight, was a woman. She was tall, unnaturally tall, dressed in a long black dress that rippled in the wind, even though the air was deathly still. Her face was pale, and her eyes burned red. James's throat went dry, his legs locked in place. The woman tilted her head. Her lips curled into something that might have been a smile. Then she moved, not walked, glided, straight toward him. James stumbled back, his heart hammering against his ribs. He turned to run, but before he could take a step, arms, long, impossibly long arms wrapped around him like iron bands, cold, strong, unyielding. James gasped, but his lungs refused to expand. The pressure tightened, crushing his ribs. His vision blurred. A cold, rotten smell filled his nostrils. Old earth, damp wood, something sour and decayed. And then, the scream. It wasn't just a sound, it was an explosion of noise. A shriek that burrowed into his skull and shattered every thought in his mind. His ears rang, his head felt like it would split open. Then, darkness. When James woke up, the sun was rising over Main Street. His body was sprawled on the sidewalk, his jacket soaked with morning dew. His head throbbed, his ears still buzzed. His friends found him minutes later, shaken and pale. "Dude," Mikey whispered. "What happened?" James sat up slowly, his hands trembling. He looked down at his arms. Bruises circled them, as if someone had squeezed him too tight. I don't know," he muttered. But he did. And when night came again, and the fog rolled in, James Carter made sure to be home before midnight. Because now, he believed, Huggin Molly was real, and she was still out there, waiting for the next fool who dared to walk alone.